They mocked the waitress for her scars, laughing like she was nothing. Then a voice cut through the room, calm, cold, dangerous. The Mafia boss stood, walked to her side, and kissed her scarred cheek in front of everyone. What they didn't know, 12 years ago, she saved his mother's life and vanished without a trace. The crystal chandeliers of Chee's cast dancing shadows across white tablecloths as Alara Monroe balanced 3 plates on her left arm. Her right hand trembled slightly. It always did when Table 7 got loud. Tonight, they were louder than usual. Another bottle of the Barolo called out Marcus Chun, a real estate developer whose watch cost more than Alara's yearly rent. His companions, 2 lawyers and a cosmetic surgeon, laughed at something on his phone. Alara approached with her practiced smile, the one that never quite reached her eyes. "Right away, sir." As she turned, her hair shifted, revealing the scar that ran from her left temple down to her jaw, a jagged reminder of a night 12 years ago that lived in her memory as nothing but smoke and screaming. "Jesus," muttered the surgeon, Dr. Philip Hayes. His voice carried across the quiet restaurant. "Did you see her face? That's tragic." Alara's steps faltered. "Keep walking," she told herself. "You've heard worse." But Marcus wasn't finished. "Hey, sweetheart." He snapped his fingers. "Come back here a second." Every instinct screamed at her to keep going, but she needed this job. She turned slowly, forcing her expression neutral. "Yes, sir?" "My buddy here." Marcus gestured to Dr. Hayes. "Runs the best cosmetic surgery practice in Manhattan. He could fix that mess on your face. Maybe knock off 20% if you mention my name." The table erupted in laughter. One of the lawyers, Sarah Kim, at least had the decency to look uncomfortable, but she said nothing. Alara felt heat crawl up her neck. Her scar tingled the way it always did when she was mortified.
I'm
fine, thank you. Come on, don't be proud." Dr. Hayes leaned back in his chair. "You work in a place like this? You're the first thing people see. That kind of disfigurement affects tips, affects." "Affects what, exactly?" The voice cut through the restaurant like a blade through silk, quiet, calm, and absolutely lethal. Alara turned toward the sound. A man sat alone 3 tables away, his dinner untouched. She'd noticed him earlier because he was impossible not to notice. Tall, dark-haired, maybe 35, with the kind of presence that made even wealthy men check their posture. His suit was impeccable, midnight blue, probably Italian, definitely expensive. But it was his eyes that held her now. Dark, intense, and fixed on table 7 with an expression that made the temperature in the room drop 10 degrees. Marcus cleared his throat. "Excuse me, we're having a private conversation." In a public restaurant, the man interrupted, standing. He moved with predatory grace, each step deliberate. "Where everyone can hear you humiliate someone who's done nothing but serve you with respect." Dr. Hayes bristled. "Look, friend, I was offering to help." "You were offering cruelty disguised as charity." The man stopped beside Alara. Up close, she could see a small scar on his left eyebrow, nearly invisible. "That's worse than honest cruelty. At least honest cruelty doesn't pretend to be kindness." The restaurant had gone completely silent. Even the kitchen staff had stopped clattering dishes. "Who the hell do you think you are?" Marcus stood, his face reddening. "Lorenzo De Luca," he said it simply, like stating the weather. The effect was instantaneous. Marcus went pale. Sarah Kim's wine glass slipped from her fingers, red liquid spreading across the white tablecloth like blood. Even Dr. Hayes looked suddenly ill. Alara had heard the name, of course. Everyone in New York had. The De Luca family controlled half the city's construction unions, owned legitimate businesses from shipping to real estate, and, if rumors were true, had connections that made powerful men nervous and foolish men disappeared. Lorenzo turned to Alara, and his expression softened in a way that made her breath catch. "That scar," he said quietly, so only she and the nearby tables could hear. "Do you know how you got it?" "A fire," Alara whispered. "When I was 15. I don't remember much." Something flickered across Lorenzo's face, recognition, Pain. Something deeper. My mother has a matching scar. On her left shoulder. She got it the same night. Alara's world tilted. What? December 19th, 12 years ago. A warehouse fire in Red Hook. His voice was steady, but his jaw was tight. Someone pulled my mother from the flames, dragged her through broken glass and burning debris, saved her life while getting hurt in the process. He paused. The girl who saved her was 15 years old. She disappeared before the ambulances arrived. We never found her to say thank you. Alara's knees went weak. Fragments of memory crashed through her mind. Heat, smoke, a woman's hand in hers, someone screaming, "Run. Just run." That girl, Lorenzo continued, his eyes never leaving hers, earned every mark on her skin. She's a hero. My hero. He leaned forward and pressed a gentle kiss to her scarred cheek. Thank you for giving me 12 more years with my mother. The restaurant erupted in whispers. Alara stood frozen, her hand rising unconsciously to touch the spot where his lips had been. Lorenzo straightened and turned back to table 7. Your bill has been paid. All of you. Leave generous tips. His smile was cold. And, doctor? If I ever hear you've offered your services to anyone with that kind of condescension again, you'll find your malpractice insurance suddenly very difficult to renew. Manhattan's a small island. Remember that. He walked back to his table, placed several $100 bills beside his untouched meal, and left without another word. Alara stood in the center of the restaurant, trembling. Around her, the whispers grew louder, but she barely heard them. Her mind was spinning through memories she'd thought were lost. A woman's face, frightened but grateful. A hand squeezing hers. A voice saying, "You're going to be fine, sweetheart. You're so brave." Alara, the sharp voice of her manager, Tom Chee, nephew of the restaurant's owner, cut through her daze. My office. Now. She followed him on numb legs, knowing somehow that everything had just changed, though she couldn't yet understand how or why. All she knew was that Lorenzo DeLuca had just connected her to a past she'd been told to forget, and something told her that was only the beginning. Tom Chee's office smelled like cheap cologne and expensive whiskey. He slammed the door hard enough to rattle the framed photos of his uncle's restaurant empire on the walls. What the hell was that? Tom's face was crimson, a vein pulsing at his temple. Do you have any idea what you just did? Alara stood with her back straight, though her legs still felt unsteady. I didn't do anything. Those customers were insulting me, and Mr. DeLuca? Mr. DeLuca, Tom laughed, but there was no humor in it. Lorenzo DeLuca just paid every table's bill in my restaurant. Do you know what that means? That he's generous? It means he marked this place. Tom paced behind his desk like a caged animal. The DeLucas and my uncle have history. Bad history. And you just gave Lorenzo DeLuca an excuse to walk into our restaurant and make a scene. He was defending me. He was making a power play. Tom whirled on her. You think he cares about some waitress? The DeLucas don't do charity, Alara. Everything they do is calculated. He jabbed a finger toward the door. That little performance out there? That was Lorenzo DeLuca sending my uncle a message. And you were the messenger. Alara's hands clenched into fists. So, I should have just stood there while those people humiliated me? Yes. Tom's voice cracked. That's exactly what you should have done. You smile, you take their tips, and you keep your head down. That's the job. That's not a job. That's abuse. Tom's expression hardened. You're suspended. 2 weeks, no pay. And if my uncle decides you're more trouble than you're worth, don't be surprised when you're looking for work somewhere else. The words hit like a physical blow. Tom, please. I need this job. My rent is due next week. Should have thought of that before you became the center of a Mafia publicity stunt. He turned his back to her. Clean out your locker. I don't want to see you here until November 15th. If then. The rain started as Alara pushed through the restaurant service entrance into the alley. Cold, bitter, thoroughly miserable, perfectly matching her mood. She'd grabbed her coat and her tips from tonight, a pathetic $43, and walked out without looking back. Her sneakers splashed through puddles as she headed toward the subway. The streets of Manhattan's West Side were busy even at 11 p.m., full of people with places to go and money to spend. None of them noticed the waitress with the scarred face, trying not to cry. Lorenzo's words echoed in her head with every step. December 19th, 12 years ago. A warehouse fire in Red Hook. She remembered waking up in a hospital bed, her face wrapped in bandages. A social worker had told her she'd been found unconscious near a burned building. No ID, no memory of how she got there. The doctors said trauma could cause temporary amnesia. They'd kept her for 3 days, treating her burns, waiting for someone to claim her. No one ever did. She'd been placed in foster care, bounced between homes for 3 years until she aged out of the system at 18. The scar became her constant companion, a reminder of a past she couldn't remember and a future that always felt one step away from falling apart. But now Lorenzo had given her something, a piece of her story. She'd saved someone. She'd been brave. The thought made her chest tight with an emotion she couldn't name. By the time Alara reached her studio apartment in Queens, she was soaked through. She kicked off her shoes, peeled off her wet coat, and collapsed onto her second-hand couch. Her phone buzzed, a text from her roommate Rachel, who worked night shifts at Mount Sinai. Heard what happened. Tom's an ass. You okay? News traveled fast in the restaurant world. Alara typed back. Been better. Lost 2 weeks' pay. She tossed the phone aside and stared at the water-stained ceiling. 2 weeks without income meant she'd have to dip into her emergency fund, the pathetic $800 she'd been saving for nursing school. 1 step forward, 3 steps back. Story of her life. Her laptop sat on the coffee table, old and slow but functional. She opened it and typed into the search bar, Lorenzo DeLuca. The results flooded in. Articles from the New York Times, the Post, business journals. Photos of Lorenzo at charity galas, ribbon-cutting ceremonies, standing beside politicians. The DeLuca family's construction company had built half the new high-rises in Brooklyn. Legitimate business, the articles insisted, though there were always careful mentions of alleged ties and rumored connections. Then she found an older article from 12 years ago. Warehouse fire in Red Hook claims 2 lives, injures 3. Her hands trembled as she clicked it. The article was brief. A fire at a DeLuca family warehouse had killed 2 security guards and injured 3 others, including Maria DeLuca, 48, who was pulled from the building by an unidentified rescuer before flames consumed the structure. Mrs. DeLuca was treated for severe burns and smoke inhalation. Investigators are looking into possible arson. Alara stared at the accompanying photo. Maria DeLuca had dark hair and kind eyes that Alara suddenly remembered looking into through smoke and flames. A woman's voice. Go, sweetheart.
Run.
Don't look back. But Alara hadn't run. She'd grabbed the woman's hand and pulled her toward an exit she'd spotted through the smoke. The memories were fragmentary, like a shattered mirror, but they were real. Lorenzo was telling the truth. She had saved his mother. A knock on her door made her jump. She wasn't expecting anyone, and it was nearly midnight. Through the peephole, she saw a young man in a dark suit holding an envelope. Her heart hammered as she cracked the door open, keeping the chain lock engaged. Yes. Alara Monroe? His voice was polite, professional. I have a delivery for you. From Mr. DeLuca. Alara stared at the envelope on her coffee table like it might explode. The young man had handed it to her without ceremony, tipped his head politely, and disappeared back down the stairs before she could ask any questions. The envelope was heavy, cream-colored, with her name written in elegant script across the front. No address, no stamp, hand-delivered. She picked it up with trembling fingers and broke the wax seal embossed with an ornate letter D. Inside was a photograph. Her breath caught. The image showed a teenage girl, thin, with wild dark hair and a hospital gown, standing beside an ambulance. Her left cheek was bandaged, but her eyes were visible, wide, frightened, defiant. Behind her, firefighters battled flames consuming a massive warehouse. It was her, 15-year-old Alara, looking directly at the camera as if she didn't understand why someone was taking her picture. She flipped the photo over. On the back, stamped in dark blue ink, was the DeLuca family crest, a lion holding a key. Below it, someone had written in the same elegant handwriting, December 19th, 2013. Red Hook, the girl who vanished. No note.
No explanation.
Just the photograph and the date that had haunted her for 12 years. Alara's hands shook as she set it down. Why didn't she remember this photo being taken? Why couldn't she remember anything clearly from that night except fragments, smoke, heat, a woman's hand? She grabbed her phone and texted Rachel, "Do you still have that contact at the hospital? The records person." The response came quickly. "Jenny? Yeah, why? Need to find my old medical records. From when I was 15. That's sealed juvie stuff. Hard to access.
I need a try.
3 dots appeared. Then, I'll ask. She owes me, but it might take a few days." Alara set down the phone and picked up the photograph again. Something about it felt wrong. Not the image itself, but the fact that it existed at all. If this photo had been taken the night of the fire, why hadn't the social worker shown it to her? Why had no one tried to find out who she was? The girl in the photograph looked lost, traumatized, like someone who should have been surrounded by concerned adults, not standing alone beside an ambulance while firefighters worked behind her. She opened her laptop again and searched for more information about the fire. Most articles repeated the same basic facts, but then she found something, a follow-up piece from a week later. DeLuca warehouse fire ruled accidental. Insurance investigation continues. The article mentioned that Antonio Ricci, a business rival of the DeLuca family, had filed a complaint alleging the fire was staged for insurance fraud. The investigation had cleared the DeLucas of any wrongdoing, but Ricci had gone on record calling it a convenient conclusion. Antonio Ricci, Tom's uncle, the owner of the restaurant where she'd worked for 3 years. Alara's stomach twisted. Was it coincidence that she'd ended up working for the DeLuca family's rival? Or was there something darker connecting these pieces? She spent the next hour searching for anything about Antonio Ricci and the DeLuca family. What she found was a decade-long feud, disputed construction contracts, accusations of bid rigging, lawsuits that went nowhere. The two families circled each other like sharks, never quite drawing blood but never backing down. And somehow, she was caught in the middle. Sleep didn't come easily. When it did, Alara dreamed of fire. She was 15 again, cutting through an alley in Red Hook on her way back to her foster home. She'd missed curfew, again, and knew she'd catch hell for it, but anything was better than being in that house with Mr. Peterson's wandering eyes and Mrs. Peterson's deliberate blindness. Smoke hit her first. Thick, black, choking. Then she saw the flames through a warehouse window and heard screaming. In the dream, everything was crystal clear, details her waking mind had buried. She'd kicked through a side door, found it unlocked. Inside, the heat was overwhelming. Shelves of boxes burned like kindling. And there, collapsed near an office door, was a woman in a blue dress. "Help!" The woman's voice was hoarse. "Please." 15-year-old Alara didn't think. She ran forward, grabbed the woman's arm, and pulled. The woman was heavier than she looked, but terror gave Alara strength. They stumbled toward the exit together, the woman leaning on her shoulder. Then the ceiling groaned. "Run," the woman screamed, pushing Alara forward. "Go!" But Alara held on. They burst through the door together as something exploded behind them, a fireball that sent them both sprawling onto the pavement. After that, the dream became confused. Voices. Sirens. Someone lifting her. The woman's hand gripping hers. "Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you." Then darkness. Alara woke gasping, her cheek burning as if the fire had touched it again. She pressed her palm to the scar and waited for her heartbeat to slow. It was 3 in the morning. Rain still pattered against the window. And she knew, with absolute certainty, that Lorenzo De Luca had told her the truth. But he'd also left her with questions. Why had she vanished from the hospital? Who had taken that photograph? And why, after 12 years, had no one tried to find her until now? She picked up the photograph again, studying every detail. In the background, barely visible, was a man in a dark coat walking away from the ambulance. He was blurred, but something about his posture seemed familiar. Alara grabbed her laptop and pulled up a photo of Antonio Ricci from his restaurant's website. Same height, same build, same way of carrying himself. Her blood ran cold. What if it wasn't coincidence? What if Ricci had known exactly who she was when he'd hired her 3 years ago? And if he'd known, what else had he been hiding? The next morning, Alara woke to another knock on her door. This time, it was barely 7 a.m., and she answered in sweatpants and an oversized Columbia University t-shirt she'd found at Goodwill. Through the peephole, she saw a woman in her late 50s, elegant, with silver-streaked dark hair and kind eyes that Alara recognized instantly from her dreams. Maria De Luca. Alara's fingers fumbled with the chain lock. She opened the door slowly, unsure what to say. Alara, Maria's voice broke on her name. May I come in? They sat across from each other at Alara's tiny kitchen table, cups of coffee growing cold between them. Maria couldn't stop staring at her, tears streaming down her face. I never thought I'd see you again, Maria whispered. When Lorenzo told me last night that he'd found you, that you'd been working at Ricci's restaurant of all places, I couldn't sleep. I had to come. Alara's throat was tight. I don't understand what happened that night. Why I can't remember. Why no one ever found me. Maria reached across the table and took Alara's hands. Her grip was warm, steady. Because someone made sure you wouldn't be found. Someone who needed you to disappear. Who? Antonio Ricci. Maria's expression hardened. That fire wasn't an accident, Alara. It was arson. Ricci paid someone to burn down our warehouse. We had evidence he was using shell companies to underbid us on city contracts, stealing work that should have been ours. The proof was in that warehouse. Alara's coffee cup trembled in her hands. But the investigation was compromised. Ricci had connections in the fire department, in the police. They ruled it accidental before our lawyers could even file an appeal. Maria's jaw tightened. We lost everything that night. The warehouse, our records, our leverage. The insurance payout took 2 years to come through, and by then, Ricci had expanded his empire. He bought his first restaurant with money that should have been ours. And me. Maria's eyes filled with fresh tears. You saved my life. I was in the office that night, working late, when the fire started. The exits were blocked. Whoever said it wanted to make sure anyone inside didn't get out. I would have died if you hadn't found me. She touched her left shoulder reflexively. I still have the scar from when part of the ceiling collapsed. You pulled me through burning debris, sweetheart. A 15-year-old girl I'd never met risked her life for me. Alara's vision blurred. I remember bits and pieces. Your voice telling me to run. Your hand in mine. When we got outside, I passed out from smoke inhalation. When I woke up in the hospital 3 days later, I asked about you. Begged the nurses to find the girl who saved me. Maria's voice cracked. They said no one matching your description had been admitted. No records, no name. I thought maybe I'd imagined you in my delirium. But Lorenzo didn't. He spent months searching. We even hired private investigators. How did I end up in foster care with no memory? Maria's expression turned dark. I didn't know until last night. Lorenzo has resources now that he didn't have 12 years ago. He made some calls, pushed some people. What he found, she paused, steadying herself. You were admitted to Brooklyn Methodist under a Jane Doe. A nurse documented your injuries, took your photograph for identification purposes. But the next morning, your file was flagged by someone in administration. Your records were sealed, your photograph removed from the system. You were transferred to social services before anyone could ask questions. Ricci, Alara breathed. We believe so. He had someone in the hospital administration on his payroll. We're still tracking down exactly who. But the timing is too perfect. You were the only witness who could confirm someone else was in that building that night. Someone who could testify that the fire was deliberately set. Maria squeezed her hands tighter. He made you disappear, Alara. And then, years later, when you aged out of the system and needed work, I think he saw an opportunity. To keep me close. To make sure I never remembered. Exactly. Maria's voice was fierce now. He could monitor you, control you. If you ever started asking questions, he'd know immediately. And working in his restaurant, serving his customers, it kept you invisible. Just another waitress with a sad story. Alara felt sick. 3 years. She'd worked for the man who'd stolen her past, who'd tried to kill Maria, who'd built his fortune on lies and ashes. Why did Lorenzo come to the restaurant last night? She asked. How did he even know I was there? Maria smiled sadly.
He didn't.
It was pure chance or fate, depending on what you believe. He had a business meeting that was canceled, decided to get dinner somewhere quiet. When he saw your scar, she touched Alara's cheek gently. I have the same one. He knew immediately. What happens now?
Now.
Maria's expression turned steely. Now we make Antonio Ricci pay for what he did. To you, to our family, to everyone he's hurt over the past 12 years. She pulled a card from her purse and slid it across the table. Lorenzo wants to meet with you. Properly this time. We have lawyers, investigators, resources. But we need your help, Alara. We need your testimony. Alara looked at the card, embossed, expensive, with an address in Tribeca. I'm suspended from work for 2 weeks. No income. You'll never work for Ricci again, Maria said firmly. I promise you that. And you'll never worry about rent or bills or nursing school again. Not if you help us bring him down. This is about more than justice, isn't it? Alara met her eyes. This is personal. Maria smiled, but there was steel beneath it. Sweetheart, everything worth fighting for is personal. The DeLuca estate in Tribeca occupied the top 3 floors of a converted silk factory. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Hudson River, and the interior was all exposed brick, dark wood, and art that probably cost more than Alara would earn in a lifetime. Lorenzo met her at a massive dining table covered in file folders, laptops, and photographs. He'd traded his suit jacket for rolled shirt sleeves and looked like he hadn't slept. Thank you for coming. He gestured to a chair. Coffee? My mother said you take it black. Your mother talks about me? Alara sat, feeling out of place in her thrift store jeans. She hasn't stopped since yesterday. Lorenzo's smile was genuine, transforming his severe face into something almost boyish. Fair warning, she's planning to adopt you, if you stay still long enough. Despite everything, Alara laughed. The sound surprised her. Lorenzo opened the nearest folder. I want to be straight with you about what we're dealing with. Antonio Ricci isn't just a restaurant owner. Over the past 12 years, he's built an empire on insurance fraud, extortion, and money laundering. The warehouse fire was just the beginning. He spread photographs across the table. Buildings, documents, bank statements. After our warehouse burned, Ricci collected a massive payout from a charity fund meant for small business fire victims. He claimed his own warehouse, 3 blocks from ours, was damaged by the same fire. It wasn't. But the charity paid him anyway because the fire inspector's report was conveniently vague. The same inspector who ruled your fire accidental? Exactly. Gerald Morrison, retired now, living in Florida on a pension that shouldn't be as generous as it is. Lorenzo's jaw tightened. We've been building a case against Ricci for years, but he's careful. Everything's hidden behind LLCs, shell companies, offshore accounts. Every time we get close, the trail goes cold. So why now? Why me? Lorenzo met her eyes. Because you're the piece he couldn't hide. You were there, Alara. You saw what he tried to bury. And I think, he paused, pulling out another folder. Alara's breath caught as she recognized the photograph from the envelope, but this time, it was part of a complete file. Admission forms, doctor's notes, treatment records. How did you get these? Let's say I have friends in medical records who believe in justice more than privacy laws. Lorenzo flipped through pages. Look at this. The admitting nurse, Catherine Walsh, documented everything. You had second-degree burns on your hands and face, smoke inhalation, severe trauma. But she also noted something interesting. Patient was clutching a scorched piece of paper when paramedics found her. Document was bagged as potential evidence. Alera's heart hammered. What document? That's the question. Lorenzo pulled out his laptop. Hospital evidence logs show it was transferred to the police that same night. But when I had someone check the police records, there's no mention of any evidence collected from the fire scene involving a Jane Doe victim. It disappeared, along with your identity. Lorenzo's expression was grim. I think you grabbed something from that office before you pulled my mother out. Something Chee desperately needed destroyed. A desk, papers scattered everywhere, and her 15-year-old self grabbing something instinctively before the heat became unbearable. I can't remember what it was, she whispered. Maybe you don't have to. Lorenzo opened a new folder. 3 months ago, I hired a forensic accountant, someone Chee doesn't know exists. She's been tracing his money for months, following every transaction, every shell company, every suspicious payment. He slid a spreadsheet across the table. Look at this pattern. The numbers meant nothing to Alera at first, but Lorenzo pointed to highlighted sections. Every year, on December 19th, the anniversary of the fire, Chee makes a payment. Same amount, $50,000, to an account registered to a Gerald Morrison in Florida. The fire inspector, who ruled both fires accidental and then retired 6 months later with a very comfortable nest egg. Lorenzo's smile was sharp. That's blackmail money, Alera. Hush money. Chee's been paying Morrison for 12 years to keep quiet about what really happened that night. Alera's mind raced. If you can prove Morrison took bribes, we can reopen the investigation. But we need more. We need Morrison to talk, or we need the original evidence. Lorenzo leaned forward. I'm flying to Florida tomorrow to have a conversation with Gerald Morrison. I want you to come with me. Me?
Why?
Because you're the victim he helped disappear. You're proof that his report was a lie. Lorenzo's expression softened. And because this is your life he helped steal. You deserve to look him in the eye when we take it back. Alera thought about her empty apartment, her suspended job, her derailed dreams of nursing school. She thought about Antonio Chee watching her service customers for 3 years, knowing exactly who she was and what he'd done to her. She thought about Maria DeLuca's hand in hers, pulling her through flames. When do we leave? Lorenzo's smile was genuine this time. Tomorrow morning. Pack light. We'll be back by evening. He stood, extending his hand. One more thing. My accountant? She could use an assistant. Someone good with numbers who pays attention to details. The pay is $60,000 a year, full benefits, and you'd be working from here. Alera stared at his hand. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a purpose. Help us take Chee down, and you'll never serve another table in your life. She took his hand, her grip firm despite her trembling. When do I start? Gerald Morrison's retirement condo in Clearwater Beach had a view of the Gulf and the kind of quiet desperation that came with too much time to think. He answered the door in cargo shorts and a faded Tampa Bay Buccaneers shirt, his face going pale when he saw Lorenzo. Mr. DeLuca, his voice cracked. I'm retired. I don't have anything to. This is Alera Monroe. Lorenzo stepped aside so Morrison could see her clearly. Though 12 years ago, you knew her as Jane Doe, the girl you helped erase from a crime scene. Morrison's hand trembled on the doorframe. His eyes fixed on Alera's scar, and something crumbled in his expression.
Jesus Christ.
May we come in? Lorenzo's tone made it clear refusal wasn't an option. The condo was generic, rental furniture, stock art on the walls, nothing personal except a few photographs of grandchildren. Morrison sat heavily on his couch while Lorenzo and Alera took the chairs across from him. The old man looked like he might be sick. I didn't know you were just a kid, Morrison said quietly, staring at Alera. Chee told me you were an accomplice. Someone he needed to keep quiet. I thought, he rubbed his face. I thought I was protecting a legitimate business interest. You thought $50,000 a year was worth lying? Lorenzo's voice was ice. I thought my daughter's cancer treatment was worth it. Morrison's hands shook. Richie knew. Somehow he knew about Emma's diagnosis, about the medical bills bankrupting us. He showed up at the hospital 3 days after the fire, told me he could make our problems disappear if I made the investigation disappear. His voice broke. My little girl was dying. What would you have done? The silence stretched. Alara felt something twist in her chest. Anger, yes, but also unwanted understanding. She thought about her own desperation, the choices she'd made just to survive. Is your daughter alive? She asked quietly. Morrison's eyes filled with tears.
Yes.
Thanks to Richie's money, she got the treatment she needed. She's 26 now, married, has a baby girl. He looked at Alara's scar. But I see your face, and I know what I did. I've seen it every December 19th for 12 years. Lorenzo pulled out a folder. Tell us about the evidence. The document Alara was holding when paramedics found her. Morrison's shoulders sagged. It was a ledger page. Handwritten, partially burned. Listed payments to city officials, names, amounts, dates. I recognized 3 of the names. Building inspectors who'd signed off on Richie's projects. He met Lorenzo's eyes. It was proof of systematic bribery. If that page had gone into evidence, Richie's entire operation would have collapsed. What happened to it? I handed it directly to Richie. He was waiting at the precinct when I brought it in, said he needed to verify it wasn't stolen DeLuca property. Morrison laughed bitterly. I knew he was going to destroy it. I knew, and I did it anyway. Alara's fists clenched.
And me?
Why did I disappear? Richie was afraid you'd seen too much, remembered too much. He had someone at Brooklyn Methodist, an administrator named Paul Chee, flag your file and transfer you out before anyone could properly identify you or take a detailed statement. Morrison's voice dropped. Chee received a very generous donation to his son's private school fund. $50,000, same as me. Richie was good at finding people's pressure points. Lorenzo leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen, Gerald. You're going to give us a full written statement. Every detail, every payment, every lie. You're going to testify, if this goes to trial. In exchange, we'll recommend leniency and arrange for your daughter's continued care if Richie tries to retaliate. And if I refuse, then I'll make sure every law enforcement agency in Florida knows you're sitting on 12 years of evidence in an arson case that killed 2 people. Lorenzo's expression was granite. Your pension disappears. Your reputation disappears. And your daughter learns what her father really did to save her. Morrison closed his eyes. When he opened them, he looked 10 years older. What do you need me to do? 3 hours later, they sat in a rented conference room at a Clearwater law office. Morrison's statement was being notarized while Lorenzo's lawyer video called from New York, confirming they had enough to reopen the case. Alara stood at the window, watching the sun set over the Gulf. She felt hollowed out, exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with the flight or the heat. Lorenzo joined her, 2 bottles of water in his hands. He offered her one. You okay? I don't know. She took the water but didn't open it. He made a choice to save his daughter.
Can I really hate him for that?
You can hate what he did and still understand why he did it. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. Lorenzo's voice was gentle. Richie's good at finding desperate people and making them complicit. Morrison, Chee, probably dozens of others over the years. That's how men like him build empires, one compromised soul at a time. Is that what happened to you? The question slipped out before Alara could stop it. How you became who you are. Lorenzo was quiet for a long moment. My father built our business on handshakes and favors. Some legal, some less so. When he died, I inherited all of it, the legitimate construction company and the debts that came with it. Debts to people who don't accept no as payment. He met her eyes. I've made choices I'm not proud of to keep my family safe. The difference is I own them. Richie hides behind other people's desperation. What happens when we get back to New York? We give Morrison's statement to the district attorney. With his testimony and our financial records, We can prove Ricci committed arson, insurance fraud, bribery, and obstruction of justice. Lorenzo's jaw tightened. He's going to prison, Alara. For a long time. She turned to face him fully. He's been watching me for 3 years. Living in his restaurant, serving his food, being invisible. What if? Her voice wavered. What if he knows we're coming for him? Lorenzo's expression turned predatory. Then he'll do what desperate men always do. He'll make a mistake. And we'll be waiting. Antonio Ricci's annual charity gala was legendary in New York social circles, a black tie affair at the Plaza Hotel where Manhattan's elite paid $1,000 a plate to pretend they cared about underprivileged youth. This year's event, scheduled for November 10th, had sold out in 3 days. Lorenzo wasn't on the guest list. He bought a table anyway. This is insane, Alara said, staring at the emerald green gown hanging in Maria's guest room. She'd been staying at the DeLuca estate since they'd returned from Florida 4 days ago, working with Lorenzo's forensic accountant during the day and trying not to think about what came next. Maria appeared in the doorway, elegant in midnight blue silk. Insane is letting that man have one more night thinking he's untouchable. Tonight, we change that. What if he recognizes me? He will. Maria's smile was sharp. That's the point. The gown fit perfectly, off-shoulder, elegant, expensive enough to make Alara feel like an imposter. Maria had done her hair in soft waves, and for the first time in years, Alara didn't try to hide her scar. She let it show, a silver line down her cheek that caught the light. You look like a warrior, Maria said softly. Exactly what you are. Lorenzo was waiting in the foyer, devastating in a tuxedo. His eyes widened when he saw Alara. You're going to stop traffic. I'm going to throw up, Alara muttered. Do it after we destroy Ricci. He offered his arm. Ready? She wasn't, but she took his arm anyway. The plaza's grand ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and false charity. Alara recognized faces from the restaurant, wealthy patrons who'd never looked at her twice when she was wearing an apron. Now, in her gown, and on Lorenzo DeLuca's arm, they couldn't stop staring. Antonio Ricci stood near the stage, holding court with a group of politicians and business owners. He was shorter than Alara remembered, with silver hair and a smile that never reached his eyes. When he saw Lorenzo enter, his smile froze. When he saw Alara, the champagne glass nearly slipped from his hand. Lorenzo guided her through the crowd with predatory patience. They stopped at tables, exchanged pleasantries, let the whispers build. By the time they reached Ricci's table, half the ballroom was watching. Antonio, Lorenzo's voice carried perfectly. Wonderful event. Always admire a man who gives back to the community. Ricci's composure was impressive, Alara had to admit. Only the tightness around his eyes betrayed his panic. Lorenzo. I didn't see your name on the guest list. Last-minute addition. I couldn't resist supporting such a worthy cause. Lorenzo's hand rested lightly on Alara's back. I don't believe you've been properly introduced to my companion. This is Alara Monroe. The blood drained from Ricci's face. His eyes darted to her scar, then away, then back. Miss Monroe, I believe you worked at one of my restaurants. I did. Alara's voice was steadier than she felt. Until your nephew suspended me for being publicly defended by Mr. DeLuca. Remember? When he kissed my cheek at dinner? The nearby conversations went quiet. People were definitely listening now. A misunderstanding. I'm sure. Ricci's smile was a grimace. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. No need. Lorenzo reached into his jacket and pulled out a manila folder. He set it on Ricci's table with deliberate care, right next to the man's salmon entree. I thought you might want to review these documents before tomorrow's press conference. Ricci didn't touch the folder. What press conference? The one where the Manhattan District Attorney announces the reopening of the investigation into the Red Hook warehouse fire of December 2013. Lorenzo's voice was conversational, but it carried through the ballroom like a bell. You remember that fire, don't you, Antonio? The one where 2 people died and several others were injured, including my mother and a 15-year-old girl who happened to be in the wrong place at the right time. Sweat beaded on Ricci's forehead. That fire was ruled accidental. by a fire inspector who received $50,000 a year for 12 years to keep his mouth shut. Alara spoke now, her voice clear and strong. Gerald Morrison. He gave a full statement 4 days ago. It's all in that folder. His testimony, the payments you made, the evidence you destroyed. Ricci's hand shot out to grab the folder, but Lorenzo caught his wrist. The movement was casual, but Ricci winced. I wouldn't, Lorenzo said softly. Those are copies. The DA already has the originals, along with 12 years of financial records showing systematic bribery, insurance fraud, and obstruction of justice. He released Ricci's wrist. You built an empire on my family's ashes. Tomorrow we take it back. The ballroom was completely silent now. Phones were out, people recording, texting, posting. This would be all over social media before dessert was served. Ricci looked around wildly, seeing his carefully constructed world crumbling in real time. His eyes settled on Alara, and something ugly twisted his features. You are nothing. A street kid who should have died in that fire. I gave you a job, a purpose. You gave her a cage. Maria's voice cut through the ballroom like a blade. She'd appeared beside them, regal and fierce. You tried to kill me, murdered 2 innocent guards, and destroyed a child's life to cover your crimes. Tomorrow, the whole city will know exactly what you are. Ricci's lawyer materialized at his elbow, whispering urgently. Ricci shook him off. You can't prove any of this. It's all circumstantial. Paul Chen is talking too, Lorenzo said. The hospital administrator who flagged Alara's records. Turns out he kept copies of everything, including the email you sent ordering him to make a 15-year-old girl disappear. He leaned closer. It's over, Antonio. The only question now is whether you surrender with dignity or wait for the FBI to arrest you at breakfast. For a moment, Alara thought Ricci might attack Lorenzo. His fists clenched, his face purple with rage. But then he seemed to deflate, seeing the phones, the witnesses, the inescapable truth of his situation. He looked at Alara one last time. You should have stayed invisible. No, Alara said quietly. You should have let me be found. 6 months later, spring sunshine poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of a renovated brownstone in Brooklyn. The building had once been a shelter. Now it was something more, a place where people who'd fallen through society's cracks could find their footing again. Alara stood in the main hall, watching volunteers arrange chairs for the opening ceremony. The banner above the stage read, "The Silent Mark Foundation, turning scars into strength." You're going to wear a hole in the floor, Rachel said, appearing with 2 cups of coffee. She'd left the hospital 3 months ago to become the foundation's program director. Everything's perfect. Stop worrying. I'm not worrying.
I'm Alara Post. Okay, I'm waiting.
What if no one shows up? Are you kidding? We've had to turn people away. Burn survivors, whistleblowers, foster kids aging out of the system. Everyone wants to see this place. Rachel squeezed her shoulder. You did this, Alara. You built something real. The months since the gala had been a whirlwind. Ricci's arrest had made national news. The restaurant empire brought down by the waitress he'd tried to erase. Morrison and Chun had both testified, their statements corroborating the financial evidence Lorenzo's team had assembled. The trial had lasted 6 weeks. The verdict took the jury 4 hours. Antonio Ricci was sentenced to 23 years in federal prison for arson, conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, bribery, and obstruction of justice. His restaurants were sold to pay restitution. His name became synonymous with corruption. But for Alara, the real victory wasn't Ricci's imprisonment. It was this, the foundation, the second chances, the chance to turn her pain into purpose. 5 minutes, called one of the volunteers. Alara smoothed her dress, simple, blue, professional. She'd finished her GED 2 months ago and started online classes toward a business degree. Maria insisted on paying tuition, refusing to take no for an answer. You saved my life, she'd said. Let me invest in yours. The doors opened and people flooded in. Survivors with visible scars and invisible ones. Journalists, donors, politicians who wanted to be photographed doing good. And in the front row, Maria DeLuca sat beside her son, both of them beaming with pride. Lorenzo caught Alara's eye and smiled. Something warm unfurled in her chest. Over the past 6 months, he'd become more than an ally. He'd become a friend, then something that felt like it might become more if they both had the courage to reach for it. But they'd taken it slow, building trust on foundations stronger than gratitude or shared trauma. The ceremony began with speeches from city officials and foundation board members. Then Maria took the stage, her voice steady as she told the story of the fire, the girl who'd saved her, and the 12 years it took to find her again. "We named this foundation the Silent Mark," Maria said, "because so many people carry scars, visible and invisible, that the world tells them to hide. But scars are proof of survival. They're maps of battles won, not battles lost." She looked directly at Alara. "This foundation exists because one girl refused to run when running would have been easier. Because she held on when letting go would have saved her from pain. Her courage saved my life. Now, it's going to help save countless others." The applause was thunderous. Alara felt tears on her cheeks and didn't bother wiping them away. Then it was her turn. She walked to the stage on legs that only trembled slightly and looked out at the sea of faces. People who understood what it meant to be overlooked, dismissed, erased. "I spent most of my life trying to be invisible," Alara began. "I thought if people didn't see me, they couldn't hurt me. If I stayed small and quiet, maybe I'd be safe." She touched her scar, the gesture unconscious now. But invisibility isn't safety. It's just another kind of cage. She thought about 15-year-old Alara, running into a burning building without thinking. About the girl who'd vanished from hospital records but never stopped surviving. About the waitress who'd served her enemies' customers with her head down and her dreams locked away. This foundation is for everyone who's been told they're broken, that their scars make them less, that their past defines their future. Her voice grew stronger. "We're here to say that's a lie. Our scars don't diminish us. They prove we're fighters. And together, we're going to make sure no one has to fight alone." The applause shook the rafters. People rose to their feet, survivors and supporters alike, united in the belief that second chances mattered, that redemption was real, that one person's courage could light the way for others. After the ceremony, Lorenzo found her on the brownstone's back terrace, looking out at the garden Maria had designed, a peaceful space with stone benches and flowering trees. "You were magnificent," he said, joining her at the railing. "I was terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing the right thing anyway." He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. "My mother wanted you to have this. We were going to wait, but she insisted it had to be today." Inside was a gold pendant shaped like a flame, delicate and beautiful. Alara lifted it carefully, watching it catch the sunlight. "The fire that scarred you gave me back my family," Lorenzo said quietly, echoing words he'd spoken months ago in a restaurant when everything changed. "But it also gave me you. And that's a gift I'll spend the rest of my life being grateful for." He fastened the pendant around her neck, his fingers gentle against her skin. When she turned to face him, his eyes held a question he didn't voice. Not yet, but soon. Alara touched the flame resting against her heart and thought about the girl she'd been and the woman she'd become. About the scars that had almost destroyed her, but instead had led her here, to purpose, to family, to a future she'd stopped believing was possible. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me when I couldn't see myself." Lorenzo took her hand, and together they walked back inside, where Maria was already planning the foundation's first fundraiser, where Rachel was signing up new volunteers, where survivors were finding community and hope. The scar on Alara's cheek caught the afternoon light as she smiled, no longer something to hide, but a badge of honor. A reminder that she'd walked through fire and emerged not broken, but forged into something stronger. The flame that had marked her would now guide others home. And that, Alara thought as Lorenzo's hand squeezed hers, was the truest kind of justice, the kind that didn't just punish wrongdoing, but transformed pain into healing. The kind that turned invisible girls into unstoppable women. The kind that proved scars could be beautiful when they told stories of survival. 3 months after the foundation's opening, Alara was working late in her office when her phone buzzed with an unknown number. She almost ignored it. Journalists still tried to reach her occasionally, but something made her answer. Alara Monroe? The voice was unfamiliar, male, with a slight Brooklyn accent. Who is this? My name is Detective Marcus Webb, NYPD. I need to speak with you about Antonio Ricci. In person. Tonight, if possible. Alara's stomach dropped. Ricci's in prison. That's what we need to talk about. Are you at the foundation? 20 minutes later, Detective Webb sat across from her in the conference room. He was in his 40s, with tired eyes and the rumpled look of someone who'd been working too many hours. He slid a photograph across the table. It showed a man in his early 30s, lean, dark-haired, with cold eyes. Do you recognize him? Alara studied the face. Something about it tugged at her memory, but she couldn't place it.
No.
Should I? His name is Vincent Ricci, Antonio's son from his first marriage. He's been living in Europe for the past 15 years, running his father's offshore business interests. Webb's expression was grim. 2 days ago, he flew into JFK. Yesterday, Gerald Morrison was found dead in his Florida condo. Carbon monoxide poisoning. Made to look like an accident. The room tilted. Morrison testified against Ricci. Exactly. And this morning, Paul Chen, the hospital administrator who helped bury your records, was hit by a car in Queens. Driver didn't stop. Chen's in critical condition. Webb leaned forward. Miss Monroe, someone is eliminating witnesses. We believe Vincent Ricci is finishing what his father started. Alara's hands went numb. Why are you telling me this? Because you're the star witness. The one who put Antonio away. And Vincent blames you for destroying his family's empire. Webb pulled out another photo. This one showed Vincent at JFK, and he was looking directly at the security camera with a smile that made Alara's blood run cold. We have him under surveillance, but he's careful. Trained in counter-surveillance, has resources, connections. He's dangerous, Miss Monroe. And I think he's coming for you. Then arrest him. For what? Being in New York? We have no proof he's connected to Morrison's death yet, and the hit-and-run on Chen happened in a blind spot. No camera footage, no witnesses. Webb's frustration was evident. I'm here to warn you and offer protection. We can put you in a safe house. No. Alara's voice was firm despite her fear. I'm not hiding. Not again. Miss Monroe. I spent 12 years invisible because of that family. I'm not disappearing now. She met his eyes. But I need to tell Lorenzo. Webb nodded slowly. Mr. DeLuca should know. But be careful who else you tell. Vincent has money, which means he has people. We don't know who might be on his payroll. After Webb left, Alara sat in the dark office, her mind racing. She thought about Morrison, the broken man who'd tried to do the right thing in the end, and Chen, fighting for his life in a hospital bed. Both had helped bury her once. Now they were paying the price for their confessions. She pulled out her phone and called Lorenzo. He answered on the first ring. Alara? It's almost midnight. Vincent Ricci is in New York. The words tumbled out. Morrison's dead. Chen's in the hospital. The police think Vincent is eliminating witnesses. Silence. Then, where are you? Still at the foundation. Stay there. Lock the doors. I'm 10 minutes away. His voice was hard, controlled. Alara, do not leave that building. Do you understand? Yes. I'm coming. She hung up and moved to the window, looking out at the quiet Brooklyn street. A car was parked across the street, a dark sedan that hadn't been there when she'd arrived. As she watched, someone in the driver's seat lit a cigarette, the brief flare illuminating a man's face. A face she'd seen in Webb's photograph. Vincent Ricci was already here. Alara backed away from the window, her heart hammering. She grabbed her phone to call 911, but before she could dial, the lights went out. The entire building plunged into darkness. She stood frozen, listening to the silence. Then she heard it, the sound of the front door opening. She'd locked it. She knew she'd locked it. Footsteps echoed in the hallway below. Slow, deliberate, coming closer. Alara's office was on the second floor. There was a fire escape outside her window, but she'd have to cross the room to reach it. In the darkness, she'd be blind. The footsteps reached the stairs. She moved as quietly as she could, feeling her way along the wall toward the window. Her hand found the latch just as the footsteps reached the second-floor landing. Alara Monroe. Vincent's voice was smooth, educated, nothing like his father's rough edges. I just want to talk about what you took from my family. She yanked the window open. The fire escape was right there, just a step away. Running again? Vincent's silhouette appeared in her doorway. That's all you've ever done, isn't it? Run from fires. Run from the truth. Run from the consequences of your actions. I didn't take anything from you, Alara said, her voice steadier than she felt. Your father destroyed his own empire. My father built something real. Something that lasted decades. And you, his voice hardened. A nobody with a scar and a sob story. You tore it all down in 6 months. He tried to kill people. He killed 2 guards. Collateral damage in business. Vincent stepped into the room. In the dim light from the street, she could see he was holding something. A gun. You know what's funny? My father always said the biggest threat to any operation isn't the law. It's witnesses. People who see too much, remember too much. He should have finished the job 12 years ago. Alara's hand found the fire escape railing. The police know you're here. The police know Vincent Ricci is staying at the Plaza Hotel, having drinks in the bar, visible on multiple security cameras. His smile was cold. They don't know about the man who looks nothing like me, who's been watching you for 3 days, learning your patterns. He raised the gun. Alara threw herself through the window onto the fire escape as the shot rang out. Glass exploded above her head. She scrambled down the metal stairs, her feet slipping on the rain-slick rungs. Another shot. The railing beside her hand sparked. She jumped the last few feet to the alley and ran. Behind her, she heard Vincent's footsteps on the fire escape, fast and sure. He was younger, faster, and he knew she had nowhere to go. But Alara had spent 12 years surviving. She knew how to disappear into shadows, how to move through alleys, how to stay alive when everything said she shouldn't be. She just had to stay ahead of him until Lorenzo arrived. If she could make it that long. Alara's lungs burned as she sprinted through the Brooklyn streets. Behind her, Vincent's footsteps echoed off brick walls. She ducked into an alley, pressing herself against a dumpster, trying to control her ragged breathing. Her phone vibrated. Lorenzo. She answered without speaking. I can hear you running, his voice was urgent. Where are you? Alley behind the foundation, she whispered. He has a gun. Lorenzo, he shot at me. I'm 2 blocks away. Keep moving toward Atlantic Avenue. Stay in populated areas. The footsteps stopped. Alara's blood went cold. In the silence, she heard Vincent's voice, calm and conversational. You know what I learned in Europe, Alara? Patience. My father was always too impulsive, too emotional. That's why he got caught. A pause. I've been watching you for weeks. I know you drink coffee at the same cafe every morning. I know you visit Maria De Luca on Tuesdays. I know Lorenzo drives you home most nights. Alara's hand trembled on the phone. Lorenzo could hear everything. I could have taken you any time, Vincent continued. But I wanted you to understand something first. This isn't revenge. This is business. You exposed our operation, cost us millions in assets. That requires compensation. I'm not dying for your father's crimes, Alara called back, moving quietly toward the alley's far exit. Vincent's laugh was soft. Who said anything about dying? Death is too quick, too merciful. No, I want you to live, Alara. But I want you to live knowing you destroyed everything you built. She reached the alley's end and risked a glance around the corner. Atlantic Avenue was 30 feet away, lit and crowded with late-night pedestrians. Safety. The foundation, for instance, Vincent said. Beautiful building. Old bones, though. Outdated electrical system. One spark in the right place. Alara's stomach dropped. You wouldn't. Wouldn't I? My father went to prison for arson. Seems poetic to use his methods. His voice grew closer. And Maria DeLuca, such a kind woman. Still recovering from that fire 12 years ago. Her heart isn't what it used to be. Stress can be so dangerous at her age. Rage flooded through Alara, drowning out fear. You touch her, and Lorenzo will. Lorenzo will what? He's not his father. Old Dominic DeLuca would have handled this the traditional way. Quick, quiet, permanent. But Lorenzo? Vincent stepped into view at the alley's entrance. He plays by rules. That's his weakness. Alara ran for Atlantic Avenue. People turned to stare as she burst onto the sidewalk, a disheveled woman with terror in her eyes. Vincent holstered his gun and followed at a casual walk, just another pedestrian on a Brooklyn street. A black SUV screeched to a halt at the curb. Lorenzo jumped out, his eyes finding Alara immediately. She ran to him, and his arms closed around her, solid and safe. You're okay, he murmured against her hair. You're okay. Vincent stopped 20 feet away, his hands visible and empty. In the streetlight, he looked like any young professional, expensive jacket, designer jeans, easy smile. No one would guess he'd just been hunting a woman through alleys. Lorenzo DeLuca, Vincent's tone was pleasant. We finally meet. I've heard so much about the man who destroyed my father. Your father destroyed himself, Lorenzo's voice was ice. And if you come near Alara again, they'll never find your body. Empty threats. You're better than that. Vincent glanced at the crowd gathering around them, phones out, recording. See? Witnesses everywhere. You can't touch me without consequences. But I can touch everything you care about whenever I want. Fire inspectors can be bribed. Building codes can be overlooked. Accidents happen. Lorenzo's expression didn't change, but Alara felt his body tense. What do you want? What my family is owed. $10 million. Payment for the assets seized when my father was convicted. Vincent's smile was cold. You have 72 hours. Wire the money to the account I'll send, or the foundation burns. And maybe Maria's estate too. So many old buildings in Tribeca. Such fire hazards. I'll go to the police. With what evidence? I'm just a tourist having a conversation. My lawyers will have me out in an hour. Vincent stepped backward, melting into the crowd. 72 hours, Lorenzo. Clock's ticking. He disappeared into the night. 30 minutes later, they were in Lorenzo's car, racing toward the DeLuca estate. Alara's hands wouldn't stop shaking. He's not going to stop, she said. Even if you pay him. I'm not paying him, Lorenzo's jaw was tight. But he's right about one thing. I can't touch him without proof. Not without starting a war that'll hurt everyone around me. Then what do we do? Lorenzo was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different. Harder, darker. We give him what he wants. Or rather, we make him think we are. I don't understand. Vincent's smart, but he's arrogant. He thinks he's untouchable because he's careful. Lorenzo's hands tightened on the steering wheel. But everyone makes mistakes. We just need to make him believe he's won. Draw him out into the open. Use me as bait, Alara said quietly.
No.
Absolutely not. Lorenzo, she turned to face him. He's already targeting me. At least this way, we control the situation. It's too dangerous. Living in fear is more dangerous, Alara's voice was firm. We end this now. Together. Lorenzo looked at her for a long moment, and something shifted in his expression. Not agreement, but understanding. If we do this, we do it my way. With backup, with planning, with every precaution. Agreed. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Marcus? It's Lorenzo DeLuca. We need to talk about Vincent Ricci. A pause. No, not protection. I'm thinking something more proactive. As Lorenzo spoke with the detective, Elara stared out the window at the city, lights blurring past. She thought about Vincent's cold eyes, his threats against Maria, against everything she'd built. She'd run from fire once. She'd been invisible for 12 years. But she wasn't that frightened girl anymore. This time, she was walking into the flames with her eyes open. And she wasn't alone. The plan was simple, which meant it was probably insane. Elara stood in the Foundation's main hall 48 hours later, watching Lorenzo's security team install hidden cameras in every corner. Detective Webb paced near the windows, speaking quietly into his radio. Outside, unmarked police cars were positioned on every block. "You don't have to do this," Maria said for the 10th time. She'd arrived an hour ago, insisting on being present despite Lorenzo's protests. "Vincent is dangerous. If something goes wrong, then we'll handle it." Elara squeezed her hand. "But he needs to believe I'm alone and vulnerable. That's the only way he'll come himself instead of sending someone expendable." The trap was elegant in its simplicity. Lorenzo had sent a message to Vincent's burner phone: "Foundation empty tonight. Security system offline for repairs. Elara working late alone. Last chance to make your point before the money transfers." They were betting that Vincent's ego, and his need to personally terrify her, would override his caution. "He'll come," Lorenzo said, checking his weapon. He wore a Kevlar vest under his shirt, and his expression was the one Elara had learned meant he was in what Maria called Dominic mode, channeling his father's ruthless instincts. "Vincent wants me to know he can reach you anytime. He'll want to prove it. And when he does?" Elara asked. "We get him on camera, making explicit threats. Armed trespass. Attempted assault. Enough for Webb to hold him while we dig into his finances." Lorenzo's eyes met hers. "But the second it goes wrong, you run. Promise me." "I promise." It was a lie, and they both knew it. At 9 p.m., everyone cleared out. The lights in most of the building went dark, leaving only Elara's second-floor office illuminated. She sat at her desk, laptop open, pretending to work while her heart hammered against her ribs. Lorenzo was in the basement with half his security team. Webb and 2 detectives were in the building across the street. Maria was safely at the estate with armed guards, despite her furious objections. The waiting was agony. At 9:47, the motion sensor on the roof access door chimed in Elara's earpiece. Webb's voice followed. "Movement on the roof. Single individual. Stand by." Elara's hands clenched. Vincent was coming from above, avoiding the street-level surveillance. Smart. Footsteps overhead. Then the sound of the roof access door opening. He was inside. Elara forced herself to keep typing, to look absorbed in work. Her earpiece crackled with Lorenzo's voice. "I see him on camera. Second-floor hallway. He's checking doors." The footsteps grew closer. Elara could hear him testing doorknobs, moving methodically toward her office. Her office door was unlocked, an obvious invitation, but Vincent's arrogance would make him take it anyway. The footsteps stopped outside her door. The knob turned slowly. Vincent stepped inside, and Elara's breath caught. He was wearing gloves and carrying a red gas canister. Not a gun, something worse. Working late. Vincent set the canister down carefully. Dedicated. "I respect that." Elara stood slowly, putting the desk between them. "The building's empty. Whatever you're planning is already done." Vincent smiled. "I placed 3 other canisters throughout the building while you were sitting here. Gasoline mixed with accelerant. This place will burn so hot, so fast, there won't be enough left to investigate properly. You'll never get away with it, won't I? I'm on camera at a restaurant in Manhattan right now, or rather, someone who looks remarkably like me is." "Paid him very well." Vincent pulled out a lighter. "By the time anyone figures out it was arson, I'll be back in Europe. And you'll be a tragic headline. Foundation director dies in fire. Cruel irony for burn victim." In her earpiece, Lorenzo's voice was urgent. "Moving in. 30 seconds." Elara needed to keep Vincent talking. "Your father would be ashamed." At least he had the courage to face his enemies. Vincent's expression darkened. My father was weak. He got emotional, got caught. I'm cleaning up his mess. He flicked the lighter, flame dancing. Nothing personal, Ilera. Just business. He tossed the lighter toward the gasoline canister. Everything happened at once. Lorenzo burst through the door, weapon drawn. NYP, drop it. But Vincent was already moving, diving behind Ilera's desk as the lighter fell. Ilera lunged forward, catching it before it hit the canister, the flame singing her palm before she crushed it out. Vincent came up with a gun, aimed at Lorenzo. The shot was deafening in the small room. But Vincent didn't fire at Lorenzo. He fired at the window, shattering it, then threw himself through the opening onto the fire escape.
Go!
Lorenzo shouted to his team. Back exit. But Ilera saw something Lorenzo didn't. Vincent wasn't running down, he was climbing up toward the roof. And in his hand was a phone, thumb hovering over the screen. A remote detonator. The other canisters, Ilera screamed. He's going to. The explosion came from the first floor. Heat and sound slammed through the building. Flames erupted from the stairwell, cutting off their exit. Vincent's voice echoed from above, triumphant. Backup plan, Lorenzo. The building burns either way, but now you burn with her. Smoke filled the office. Lorenzo grabbed Ilera's arm, pulling her toward the window. Fire escape. Now. They climbed out onto the metal platform, but flames were already licking up from below. The foundation, her foundation, built on hope and second chances, was being consumed. Up. Lorenzo pushed her toward the ladder. Roof. They climbed through choking smoke, the metal rungs hot beneath their hands. Behind them, windows exploded from the heat. Sirens wailed in the distance, but they'd never arrive in time. They reached the roof to find Vincent waiting, gun trained on them. Poetic, isn't it? He smiled through the smoke. You pulled my father's world down around him. Now I pull yours down around you. Lorenzo stepped in front of Ilera, shielding her. It's over, Vincent. The building's surrounded. You can't escape. Neither can you. Vincent's smile was insane. We all burn together. Behind him, the roof access door burst open. But it wasn't police. It was Maria DeLuca, holding a gun with steady hands and murder in her eyes. You want to burn? Her voice was cold steel. Let me introduce you to real fire. Maria's gun never wavered. Drop it, Vincent. Or I'll finish what your father started, destroying this family's legacy completely. Vincent's smile faltered. You won't shoot. Lorenzo's too civilized for her. The shot cracked through the night. Vincent's gun flew from his hand, skittering across the rooftop. He clutched his bleeding wrist, shock replacing arrogance. My husband taught me to shoot before Lorenzo was born, Maria said calmly. And unlike my son, I don't waste time with warnings. Police flooded onto the roof. Webb emerged from the stairwell, coughing but alive, his team behind him. They'd used the service entrance, avoiding the flames. Vincent was on the ground in seconds, hands cuffed behind his back. You're insane, Vincent spat at Maria. You could have killed me. If I wanted you dead, you'd be dead. Maria lowered the gun, and Lorenzo carefully took it from her trembling hands. I wanted you scared. Like you scared my family. Firefighters were already battling the blaze below. Webb pulled Ilera aside as paramedics checked her burned palm. We got everything on camera. The threats, the arson, the attempted murder. He's going away for decades. The foundation, Ilera's voice broke, can be rebuilt. Lorenzo appeared beside her, soot-streaked but whole. Buildings are just wood and stone. What matters is the people. But as Ilera watched flames consume the brownstone, the space she'd poured her heart into, grief overwhelmed her. This was supposed to be where broken people found healing. Now it was just another fire in her life, taking everything away. 3 weeks later, Ilera stood in the ruins of the foundation, surrounded by construction crews and architects. Insurance adjusters had declared it a total loss. The investigation confirmed Vincent had planted 4 separate incendiary devices. He'd meant to leave nothing standing. He'd almost succeeded. Miss Monroe. A woman approached, mid-50s, professional, kind eyes.
I'm Sandra Chen.
Paul's sister. Alara's throat tightened. Paul Chun had died 2 days after Vincent's arrest, never waking from his coma. Another victim of the Ricci family's violence. I'm so sorry about your brother. He made mistakes. Big ones, Sandra's voice was steady. But at the end, he tried to do the right thing. That should count for something. She handed Alara an envelope. He left this for you. Wrote it in the hospital before the coma, just in case. Inside was a letter in shaky handwriting. Alara, I helped erase you once. Let me help rebuild you now. My life insurance policy, $500,000, goes to the Silent Mark Foundation. It's not enough to undo what I did, but maybe it's enough to start again. Paul Chun. Tears blurred Alara's vision. He didn't have to. He wanted to. Said you deserved a second chance. Since he took your first 1 inch, Sandra squeezed her shoulder. Build something beautiful. Make it mean something. 6 months later, the new Silent Mark Foundation opened its doors. The building was modern, fireproof, with state-of-the-art safety systems. But it kept elements of the old. Scorched bricks from the original brownstone were incorporated into the entrance, a reminder that beauty could rise from destruction. The dedication plaque read, "In memory of Paul Chin and Gerald Morrison, proof that it's never too late to choose courage over fear." The opening ceremony was smaller this time, more intimate. Survivors shared stories. Maria spoke about resilience. Rachel introduced new programs for foster youth and whistleblower support. Then Lorenzo took the stage, and the crowd quieted. A year ago, I walked into a restaurant and saw someone being humiliated for her scars. I defended her because I recognized those scars. They matched my mother's. They were proof of heroism, not shame. He found Alara in the crowd. But I've learned something since then. Scars aren't just proof of what we've survived. They're proof of what we chose to become afterward. He gestured to the building around them. This foundation burned. Vincent Ricci tried to destroy it, just like his father tried to destroy the girl who saved my mother. But here we are. Rebuilt, stronger, fireproof. His voice grew firm. You can't burn down courage. You can't destroy hope. And you can't erase people who refuse to stay invisible. The applause was thunderous. Later, as the sun set over Brooklyn, Alara and Lorenzo stood on the new rooftop garden, Maria's design, peaceful and green, nothing like the nightmare that had unfolded on the old building's roof. Vincent's trial starts next month, Lorenzo said quietly. 23 counts including attempted murder, arson, and conspiracy. The DA thinks he'll get 40 years minimum. His father got 23. Together, that's, Alara calculated, 63 years of Ricci men behind bars. Justice isn't always poetic, but sometimes it rhymes. Lorenzo took her hand. Are you ready for what comes next? The trial? Testifying again. After that, he turned to face her fully. I know we've taken things slow. Given everything that's happened, I wanted you to have time to heal, to build your own life without feeling obligated. Alara kissed him, cutting off his careful words. When she pulled back, his eyes were wide with surprise and something deeper. I'm not obligated, she said firmly.
I'm chosen.
There's a difference. His smile was radiant. Then choose this. He pulled out a small box. Not a ring, but a key. Move into the estate. Not as a guest, as family. Help me figure out what comes next for both of us. Alara took the key, feeling its weight. A year ago, she'd been invisible, a scarred waitress with no past and no future. Now she was surrounded by people who saw her, valued her, loved her. Yes, she whispered. Maria appeared with champagne, having clearly been eavesdropping. Finally, I was starting to think I'd have to lock you two in a room together. They laughed, the sound carrying over the Brooklyn rooftops as the city lights began to glow. Below, the foundation's windows blazed with warmth, not fire this time, but light. Inside, survivors were finding community, whistleblowers were finding safety, and invisible people were learning to be seen. Alara touched the flame pendant to her throat and thought about the 15-year-old girl who'd run into a burning building without thinking. That girl had saved Maria's life, but lost her own identity in the process. It had taken 12 years, 2 fires, and 2 generations of Chee men to get it back. But she had it now, not just her past, but her future. Not just survival, but purpose. Not just scars, but stories worth telling. The fire that marked her would always be part of who she was. But it no longer defined her. She was Alara Monroe, Foundation Director, whistleblower, survivor, and, finally, someone who'd stopped running from the flames and learned to carry her own light instead.
The end.